Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March edition of Innovation Insights. It's amazing how fast the year's gone, and we're already in late March. So thank you all for attending, and we've got a great lineup today. We had one of our proposed speakers backed out last week and unable to make it, so we have two sets of speakers, two presentations. So we've given them a little bit of extra time today, but we will probably still finish a little bit before the 1 o'clock hour on the East Coast. So again, thank you for coming. Just a reminder about IACMI. We organized around the themes of convene, connect, and catalyze, bringing people together and making things happen between people and companies, through our networking projects, co-funding of projects, training and workforce development, the supply of interns, our vast array of facilities and experts that exist within IACMI core partners, the ability to offer influence upon future funding and direction of the industry, to serve as consultants for our members that need that, and then furthering education. A little plug here, because you are going to hear more from the SAMPE groups in a bit, but I want to make sure that promote the SAMPE 2023 in Seattle next month. IACMI will be there in full force at booth N31, so come see us there, and you'll hear more about SAMPE in a few minutes. Also, we'll be at JEC, so it's good to see. And I just spoke to some folks at JEC this morning, and they're expecting to turn out similar to the pre-COVID days. So it's a very, very good sign that show, while it was really good last year, is going to come back in full force this year. So the world needs this. And then, I'm going to make sure I'm putting a plug, save the date, June 20th to 22nd for our members meeting in Knoxville, IACMI members meeting. If you're not a member, become a member and come to this. It's a lot of fun, a lot of great interaction that occurs. We will be opening up the registration site here in about a week. So it's about 3 months away. We'll be opening the registration site in about a week. Just a few pictures from, last year's members meeting here, along with the tag for this year's member meeting, but great receptions. We can't promise you quite a rainbow, at the reception, but we'll do our best. But you'll hear from some great speakers at the members meeting. A little bit more about Innovation Insights. We do these most months. There's a few months where we skip, like we will skip next month because of SAMPE and JEC filling the calendar, and we'll skip again in June because of our members meeting. But most other months we will hold the Innovation Insights. All the previous webinars are on the IACMI website. They're all recorded. So if you've missed something and you want to go back and see it, or if you've got a colleague you think needs to see something, feel free to recommend that they go back and see that. Okay, it's time to get started on today's first speaker. Our first speaker is Sam Wilding. He's the Director of Sales and Engineering at Isotruss. Okay, and I want to, congratulate Isotruss on winning a JEC Innovation Award. They will, their display will be at JEC next month, but it's a pretty significant reward from your peers to be given that honor. So with that, I will turn it over to Sam.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And then let's see if the next part works. Can everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Dale, and everybody attending for having me. And like Dale mentioned, we received a JEC Innovation Award for in their infrastructure space. So they have a planet innovation or innovation planets. I can't remember exactly what they call it. Display area. We'll have one of our structures there that anybody attending can go see. So it'll be a 20-foot tower, weighs about 85 pounds. So we're pretty excited to be able to show that off. And we'll also be attending the show, or our CEO, Nathan Rich, will be attending the show with UAMI, the Utah Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Initiative. So we'll be sharing booth space with them. But if you want to see the tower, you got to go to the Innovation Planet display area. But we're very excited about that award and that show, and to be participating here with IACMI. So as mentioned, my name's Sam Wilding. I'm the Director of Sales and Engineering at Isotruss. And I mean, we're a small company, very much in the startup phase. So we make up titles, and that's the one that I've made up for myself, just based on what I do most days, but not necessarily all days. And in my interactions with IACMI and some of the groups that they work with a lot here in Utah, the UAMI, there's quite a bit of familiarity with Isotruss. It's a technology that has been around for a long time, and a company that has existed in various forms for a while. So I didn't want to spend too much time just talking about us and pitching what we do here, especially because I don't think that most of the attendees are necessarily interested in purchasing product from us or anything like that. What I wanted to do was, one, give a little bit of background on Isotruss, show some of the things that we've been working on over the past few years, and then just talk about some of the challenges and opportunities in the marketplace that we are seeing, particularly in civil infrastructure, in the hopes that some of the attendees have had similar challenges. Maybe some of our experiences will be beneficial to you. All right, here we go. So the first structure I want to talk about, and maybe just a little more background about Isotruss before I dive in here. So Isotruss was invented at Brigham Young University here in Utah in the late 90s, of all things, by Dr. David Jensen. And he was working on a NASA project. They needed a lightweight and ultra stiff structure for a solar array, and that's where the idea came from. And that led to a whole bunch of research. We have stacks of theses and dissertations here that various students have worked on. It also led to some various projects, some of them towers. There's a bicycle. In fact, I have one of the bike frames sitting here behind me that made from Isotruss. So various things have been tried with it. Most recently, there's been interest in the cell phone tower market or other similar towers, as companies have looked for alternatives to metal. And for any of you that have had any discussions in the infrastructure space, you know that fiberglass is starting to make some inroads in bridge decks, in rebar, in pilings, in other areas. So you can see a shift in a civil infrastructure in the direction towards composite materials. And so we're capitalizing a little on that, but going in a kind of a new space. There are fiberglass utility poles, but there's not a lot happening in composites in the telecom infrastructure space. Anyway, that's where we're playing based on early interest from companies like American Tower. So I just want to talk about some of our past projects, give you an idea for some of the things we're doing. And then, like I said, talk a little bit more broadly about the market trends we're seeing, some of the challenges that we're facing. So this is for the Bureau of Land Management. This is on Elk Mountain in Wyoming. You can see the little metal structure in the image. They had a metal pole on this, but every year it would break. That pole could fold in half for shipping purposes, and it would frequently shear off in the winter storms. Very high wind speed area up on top of this mountain. You can see that it's pretty flat around it. So anyway, extreme winter and winds on this structure. So we were approached by the Bureau of Land Management to come up with a replacement. And you can see that in the image. This tower is 40 feet tall. It's about 20 inches in diameter, weighs, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I think it's about 200 pounds total. So one of the key aspects for this project was we needed to be able to get it up there, and ideally without having to use anything too too robust. So a pickup truck and a trailer was all we needed to get it up there, and three people in a day, and it was installed. And the BLM, so this was the end of last year. Our representative at the BLM ran some tests on the structure and found the antennas were working properly, and then they weren't, which made us panic because we thought, oh no, the tower has come down. But they took a snowcat up, and it was actually a wiring issue, and the tower was still up as of a month ago. So great news for us. You know, it's still standing, but it was an exciting project and a great application of an Isotruss structure. Going to larger towers, this one is again 40 feet tall, but much more robust than the Elk Mountain one. So this is for a company called Smart, one of the major telecom companies in the Philippines. Their wind speeds, their minimum design wind speed there in the Philippines is 175 miles per hour. So they just have extreme conditions that they're dealing with. And they do a lot of rooftop structures, which aren't common here in the US, but if you go to some foreign countries, it's very common to see cell phone towers on top of buildings. And so in this case, the lightweight nature of our structures, which are typically a tenth the weight of an equivalent steel structure, it makes a big difference to the installers. And that's what this one is. You can't see the rooftop here, but it's on top of a roof, and they can reduce the amount of reinforcement on the building they have to do by reducing the weight. So this one's been up for a couple of years, has been through a few of their typhoon seasons, and is still performing well. And another advantage in the Philippines, you're pretty extreme humidity, and so getting away from metallic structures has been beneficial to them. Another one in the Philippines, much lighter, again 40 feet. It's kind of our sweet spot, is about 40 feet, but not on a rooftop this time. Pretty standard foundation installation, but just another example of what we do. This was a terrible picture. I mean, there's even garbage in it, as you can see, but it's the only one I have. This is for Viettel, a major telecom company in Vietnam, and this is also on top of a roof. It's on top of a hospital, actually, and I don't have any with any antennas on it. This tower is 60 feet, but again, another one where the reduction in weight was very advantageous, and it's still standing and still performing well there in Vietnam. This was kind of like this is the beginnings of Isotruss in many ways as a player in the telecom infrastructure space. It wasn't an obvious industry to go into. I mean, honestly, it's almost sad how much I know about telecom towers now. They're things that you normally just drive by, and now I'll look at one and that one's got to be about 80 feet. Look at how much stuff they have on it. So, you know, conversations with my family are far more dull now that I'm in this industry. But it's an important part of our infrastructure, you know, providing connectivity. And if you stop driving anywhere and pay attention to how much of this vertical infrastructure there's significant investment in this space as we go for more connectivity, faster speeds. With the move to 5G, you need more towers, you need antennas closer together because the range is smaller. So anyway, you know, just one of the benefits of working in an industry that you didn't really know existed until you were in it. Benefits or curses, you pick. So American Tower, the largest owner of towers in the United States, and I believe second in the world, second only to a Chinese company. So this was the company that originally showed interest in moving away from metallics. Some very forward-thinking individuals there. So we did a demonstration for them. This one's 40 feet. What was a little bit unique about this one? So it was never designed to actually hold anything. They just wanted to see how it all went together. But for the foundation for this structure, they actually embedded Isotruss in concrete, had it stick out about 4 feet above the ground, and used it as the concrete reinforcement, and then put these other sections on top. So that's not something we see often, but it was a kind of an innovative approach by American Tower. So this is really just a picture to show how light these things can be. So this structure is 40 inches in diameter, and I guess I should have grabbed the whole thing so you could see it, but there is only one person holding it. And 20 feet long. This one probably weighs, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 pounds. So we can get really, really lightweight structures. Okay, so now let's move away from Isotruss as a history and more into what the main subject of my presentation is. And I just wanted to talk about the main barriers that we face and that I think a lot of composite material providers face going into civil infrastructure. It's an important industry. You might even say critical. But it's also a mature industry with a lot of solutions that have been there for a long time. And so there's some unique challenges associated with entering some of the civil space. So I'm going to be talking from our perspective. This might not apply to everybody, but again, I hope that this is helpful to those listening. So the first barrier that we have faced is civil codes. So this TIA standard, this is the code that the US telecom infrastructure lives by. It's TIA 222. This is revision G, but there's a new revision as well. And depending on the state, they'll use either G or H. This standard is 250 pages long, which can be short compared to some other standards. But basically, if we want a civil stamp, if we want any civil engineer out there to sign off on our structure, we have to be compatible with this code. And now the main challenge here is this code. If you want to read through it, and I will spare you reading through it because it's quite dry, as most codes are. It was written for steel, and it was written for standard infrastructure or tower type designs. The geometries they discuss and how loads are applied are based on the designs that you see out there. And so it's been an interesting challenge for us to come in. Our geometry, if you noticed in those images, we're a hexagon. Hexagons are not covered in this standard, nor is carbon fiber as a material, nor is fiberglass specifically. And so we had to get creative, and luckily we had the help. There's a civil engineering firm that most people haven't heard of, Paul J. Ford. They're widely known in the telecom space. They were willing to see how, I guess you could call it, the spirit of the law applied to our structures. And they pulled from a couple other standards to find best practices. So there's another standard from AASHTO, our highway infrastructure standards, that does specifically address fiberglass. So we pulled from that to fill in the gaps in the TIA standard. And that has been critical in being able to get civil engineers to sign off on our designs. I don't know if you'd call it a loophole. We've found, so while the US is extremely cautious on its adherence to this code, or at least on, I guess, exceptions to this code, we found that in other countries, they're a little bit more willing to try something new. Maybe there's less implications if things go wrong, but they're more willing to think outside the box than what we found here in the US. So that's one of the reasons that we found these other countries. Not that there's no rules that we have to apply to there, or that we still have to adhere to certain rules, but they're willing to look beyond specifically what the code says to say, okay, your design strength values or whatever they are, and that is sufficient for our purposes. So maybe a little more interpretive is the right way to put it. So in the Philippines, that's very much been the case, where they've been a little bit more flexible in their willingness to adopt new materials. But anyway, just in the civil space, codes, whatever the design codes are critical, and getting familiar with them, and then finding an advocate. Paul J. Ford, just even name dropping that. If we're talking to a company like a Verizon or an AT&T or American Tower or Crown Castle or any of these companies, if we can say, Paul J. Ford has approved our designs, that's an instant boost to our credibility and we can often at least get to the next step in the conversation. So that's been a huge boost to us, finding that ally, knowing the code well enough to have an intelligent discussion about it, and having those questions like I mentioned, the standard doesn't discuss non-metallics specifically, but we can pull from other codes and how they handle non-metallics and use those to inform our conclusions, and also some of the assumptions that go into our design. So anyway, in the infrastructure space, the codes are absolutely essential. Okay, so educating the people that you work with, and not your employees, those that you're trying to convince. So this is an actual civil engineer quote when I showed him the material properties for the carbon fiber that we're using. The carbon fiber we use is not special. It's not even I'd call a high performance carbon fiber. It's pretty basic, especially if you start looking into the aerospace world. Our stuff, again, it's almost bland compared to some of the material properties you can get from companies like Hexcel. And what was shocking about this is, first of all, we'd sent a presentation to this particular civil engineer that covered all of the material properties we use in our design. And it was clear that he hadn't looked at those and was seeing them for the first time in our meeting. But two, he'd never even considered materials had the strength values that we were showing in our material properties list. And he was used to steel. He'd only worked with steel and other metals. Those were the only things that he was familiar with. And it was shocking to him to see how high of a tensile and compressive strength value we could get. So there's, at least in our experience in the civil space, there's a vast lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge about composite materials. And so education has to be a key part of whatever your commercial efforts are, because most of the people that you'll be working with weren't exposed to a lot of composite materials. In fact, as an analogy, so when I first graduated school, I worked for a company called US Synthetic. They make synthetic diamond for oil and gas drilling. And diamond is an incredible material, but we realized in our conversations with engineers at various companies that diamond was viewed, as kind of an exotic material that might be good in a few places, and it's pretty to look at and works well as a gemstone. But as far as its properties, it's incredibly thermally conductive. In fact, one of the most thermally conductive materials we know of. And engineers just didn't know that. So anyway, at US Synthetic, we started doing this push to get engineers to view diamond as an engineering material. So when they're trying to solve a problem, diamond is one of the materials that comes to mind for their use case. And obviously it's not appropriate everywhere, but what I'm getting at here is from the education standpoint, it's important that education of these civil engineers in composite materials, their limitations and their advantages, is communicated somehow, because a lot of the civil engineers I work with just don't have the background. Very free education. So I know this is a repeat of the last one, but another, not just on the material side, but another major misunderstanding is basics of composite manufacturing. I can't tell you how many times we've been asked how our structures are welded. And they're not, composites don't weld well, for if any of you have tried. They ask, okay, so you must glue them together somehow. It's like, well, I mean, kind of, but not exactly. And the winding process, as we start talking about carbon fiber tows and the resins and how it's all cured in one structure, it takes some time before those that we're talking with understand some of the basics about how these structures come together. They start asking about repairability and saying, how can we just wrap this structure up and we'll be okay? And kind of a fundamental misunderstanding about how excuse me, about how fiber orientation will affect the strength of the structure. And Should have brought some water with me. So anyway, just education into some basics into composite manufacturing should be another piece of your commercialization efforts. That's a struggle that we've run into multiple times, and it takes some significant time to get engineers that are familiar with, with metal and welding and bolting to understand winding and resins, and again, how everything cures together. So thank you. One of my wonderful colleagues brought me a drink of water. So that's the third barrier there, that education just about basic composites, their material properties, and how they're manufactured. Okay, so barrier 4, cost. And I think this is a very common issue in composite materials. So we manufacture with toe preg, which is carbon fiber toe that already has the resin on it. There's also, wet winding and fabrics. For those of you familiar with composites, there's nothing new here, but these materials, composite materials, are often expensive. I know glass, we're talking about carbon fiber here. Glass often doesn't come up to these levels, but some of it can be quite a bit more expensive than steel. So here, $18 to, like I indicated here on this slide, I'm not sure if there is an upper limit on toe preg costs. I've seen up to $80 per pound, but I think there might be more. And steel, $1 to $4 a pound, varies depending on the market conditions. So the key here is not that this is a lost cause. As I mentioned, our structures tend to be 1/10 the weight of a steel structure. So we can cut down on the amount of material that we have to use in a big way. But in our experience, there has to be other advantages that you're communicating to the client that are economically valuable to them. So in the aerospace world, lighter weight makes a huge difference, and there's a premium to be paid there. In our experience in the telecom space, that can be true, but it's not true everywhere. Excuse me. So if you're setting up some kind of infrastructure somewhere where it's easy to get trucks and equipment, the lightweight savings, yeah, maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But as I mentioned before, if it's going on a rooftop, it might start to be really valuable. Or if you're going into some remote destination, or maybe the equipment has to be taken by helicopter, and now being able to save helicopter trips, that's really valuable. So really honing in on that value proposition and finding where it matters, where it economically matters in a big way, has been critical to us. Just because the material costs are high, composite materials have some incredible advantages. And we've talked about no corrosion, no rot, and again, the lightweight nature, but making sure you hit places where that matters. So coastal regions are good for us just because rust is worse there. So anyway, just as you think about marketing your products and your structures, it's critical to make sure that those are delivering actual value to the customer, because at least in our case, steel is a viable alternative. And so we're going to find where we have an unfair advantage compared to the traditional materials. All right, I'm going to rant just a little bit. I apologize to any civil engineers on the call. It's actually not really a rant. The civil engineers that we've dealt with have been extremely hard to convince to change their ways of thinking and to look past the solutions that are already there to new ones. And I will argue that I think that's a good thing. We're talking about civil infrastructure. We're talking about things where people could be killed if these things don't perform the way they're supposed to. So it is good that they're conservative, and it's good they're concerned about the design codes, and it's good that they're concerned about just rapidly adopting something new and setting it up somewhere. But that does lead to the challenge of how do you get new materials to be adopted? And I think everything I've said applies to this a little bit, that education is key. having other civil firms, knowing that another civil firm has approved whatever it is you're working on, that can be a huge vote that your structures are safe. We do a lot of structure testing so that we actually have data. We found that speculation does not work well. I don't think it works well on most engineers, definitely not on civil engineers. They want to see data. So it's another critical piece, getting that test data so that we can show these civil engineers, yes, these structures do what we say they're going to do. Any data showing the performance of the structures is good. Knowing the code well, as I talked about before, is essential to communicating to the civil engineers. But maybe a key takeaway from this slide for everybody is just understanding that this will take time. This isn't just an overnight thing that's going to happen. And I think those that have worked in the fiberglass infrastructure space would agree with me here. You look at the departments of transportation that are adopting fiberglass. Florida Department of Transportation comes to mind. There's one, I think Maine Department of Transportation has been big on it. There's a couple of them. Dale, do you have a comment there about those that do?
Well, Florida and Maine are probably two of the leaders, and I would suspect, and I know that Joe Fox is online, so he's probably got some ideas as well. But yeah, I think this is your last slide, if I recall.
Yeah, I'm about that.
Yeah, so I think we ought to, cut to questions real quick, so that we can transition over.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I think we had a question about whether the truss components are pultrusions. I think they're probably filament wound, but
yes,
you can confirm that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No pultrusions. It's all wound together. Yeah,
you show these all in communication towers, but I'm sure there are other applications, where it might be a stanchion for, say, somebody's asked about solar canopies in parking lots. Mm-hmm. I know we have a project that we funded with you to explore anyway its possible use for supporting wind turbine towers, as a replacement for steel and wind turbines, particularly for offshore, so, I presume that, that anything that where you have an issue where you have lots of wind and you need a stiff like structure, you have a possible opportunity for this material.
Yeah. And those are all great applications, ones that we've looked at so far. We've been focused on the telecom space so up to this point, but we've dabbled in some of those other ones, particularly in the distributed wind, because if you look at those offshore wind structures, they're mind-blowingly big. Yeah, right. Yeah, I understand it's a scale issue. So yeah. So okay, we need to move on, but there are other questions in the Q&A panel, and I'd appreciate if you go in and just answer those. Yep. Our CEO, Nathan Rich, looks like he's been jumping in to answer some of those. So thank you, Nathan. So if you could answer those, that would be great. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everybody for your time. Thanks, Sam. All right. So we'll move on to our next set of speakers, in that we have Raj Machanda, who's the Chief Technology Officer for SAMPE, and Chris Locke, who's the Director of Marketing and Membership Services for SAMPE. And we're giving him an opportunity here to tell you about the upcoming SAMPE conference and all the great things you'll see. If you've never been to one, you've missed a lot. And it's got a great location in Seattle in a brand new building this year. So I'm really looking forward to to being there for that. So let you folks take it away, and whoever starts
Dale,
first.
Thank you. Yeah, Dale, I think Chris is first, but I just wanted to say this is a great segue from Sam's point. One of his slides about the whole education piece. I mean, that's what the society is here for, right? Education and networking, and then yes, our annual event. But just like IACMI, just like UAMI, that is our purpose, to educate, and not only the current community, but a lot of new folks coming in who don't, as Sam mentioned, know about all the benefits of composites. So it's a great segue. So Dale, your team, very strategic in the way you guys set that up. Chris?
Absolutely.
We'll take it.
Hi, everybody. Chris Locke here. Thank you for the time. Much appreciated. Dale, this is just terrific. So this is a great segue to quickly talk a little bit about SAMPE, since we're talking about our conference, but also who we are as an organization, right? So we're going to focus on the fact that we are a North American organization that works with composites, advanced materials, to help innovate and find the solutions that the industries need. And the verticals were talked about earlier by our previous speaker, which was very interesting to me. But also, and you can see our core values, which I won't speak to so much, but just know that in a lot of ways, what SAMPE does is we do bring people together. And what I mean by that is, first of all, we are a community. We're here to help our people, our membership, and people who are interested in what we do to come together in unique ways. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. But the emphasis is on who we are as a North America organization. We are global, but these are some of the numbers that we have for some of our chapters in the North America area. You can see, luckily, that Seattle is one of our biggest and most active chapters, and that's where we happen to be having our conference this year, which is nice. But we do have chapters all across the country, and there's one for everybody, and including one in Mexico and another one up in Canada.
You're not going to talk about Brazil?
So Brazil is coming into its own in a big way. Yeah, it's fascinating to see them as the composites manufacturing grows in Brazil. So too is our chapter. So that's a great point, Raj.
Yeah.
Raj, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. So these are many of the official committees that are available. And as Chris mentioned, we are a member-driven organization. So certainly North America, you can join, and actually overseas, there are all units in Europe and in China, Japan, etc. And we just mentioned Brazil. But these are some of the official standing committees. And these committees have been around for some time. We have Dr. Scott Beckwith on the call. He's probably been involved or contributed to each and every committee there is. What's really neat out here is one of the new things that my team is involved in, and Chris and Scott, the Technical Excellence Committee. Now we're trying to formalize the structure of these technical committees that we have. And the technical committees are in focused areas. And what we're trying to do is introduce some structure to the SAMPE infrastructure, because at some of the other professional societies, whether it's IEEE, ASME, or we've heard a lot about civil engineers, ASCE, they have divisions, they have their own mini societies. So that's one of the things that we're trying to bring here. But I think on the committees, it's very useful, because if you would like to engage and not only attend our event, which we want you to do, but if you want to get more involved in DEI or finance or future conferences, it's not that difficult. All you do is need to volunteer. We get you, up to speed on what's going on through the committee leadership. And I think it's a great way to get involved. And again, as I said, not only to deliver a paper or sit in on a tutorial, it's really good to be involved in the leadership side. Why? Because maybe one of these days you're going to be SAMPE president.
So Raj is right. And actually, we are actively recruiting for these committees. We're always looking for people to join us. And I want to point out, before we get more involved in the technical committees, that things like the Public and Government Engagement Committee, that's an interesting one, because we're not a society built on advocacy per se. But this particular committee, what they're doing is on a more localized level. What they're trying to do is connect what we have with the federal government, with the state and local communities, to know what is happening with our membership and what our industries that we're connected to are doing for their community. So for example, I spoke to the Kansas chapter. They're in thinking about getting involved with our committee because they work closely with their economic development office, right? And proving that the aerospace industry and the composites and the people that are using our materials make a very direct impact on the community outside of Wichita for the whole state. So that's one area. We have people involved in DEI because they need to take that back to their organization. So they come to us, they work on our committee to see what's out there, see who's doing what are some of the best practices that they can grab and take back to their own organization. So we have people on that committee who run the gamut. We've got people from government that are involved, major international conglomerates, to little mom and pop organizations and freelance consultants that want to be mindful of what's happening in our culture and how it impacts our industry. So they're involved in that as well. So why don't we, Raj, take a deeper dive into your technical committees?
Great, thank you. And before we go off on that point, Chris, I just wanted to mention, so, if you position SAMPE almost as your incubator, just like what Sam was talking about, what they're doing, but you can come into SAMPE and engage how you would like. I'm going to talk to you briefly about tech committees, but what Chris was saying, we at a SAMPE event, SAMPE conference in Seattle, you're going to hear shortly that we have programming from NASA, from Air Force. So, this is what happens. All the connecting comes together, and then whether it's NASA High Camp or Air Force PCARD, that's what it's about. You engage with us. You almost do a test at SAMPE, and then you help us produce some relevant programming. On the technical committees, these are 7 committees that have been recently launched. And as I mentioned, there's what's new about this is there's structure, right? So these committees, what we're envisioning down the road is they will become really these robust technical bodies. And if you have an interest in space applications or thermoplastics, or if you just want to learn about them, if you may be new to the industry, and I think that's one of the things we're finding out, that when we set these up, we assumed that our own membership and people in the industry would get engaged and get involved, which is great. But what we're also seeing is happening is students are realizing, look, it costs nothing to do this. All they have to do is sign up on our 365 network, and then you can engage with people like Dr. Scott Beckwith or thermoplastics. We have David Leach, who's our chair. Space applications, we have Chris Fleming from Virgin Galactic, who's our chair. Bobby Cook from High Temperature Materials, from Hexagon, a chair of High Temp. Lou from Bonding and Joining, Lou Everest. So, at the end of the day, what we're really offering is access. It's intellectual stimulation, because every month, these committees are meeting remotely, and then twice a year they meet at SAMPE spring event and CAMEX. And we are seeing, and we made this very freeform, we are seeing that a lot of these committees are bringing in guest speakers. So that's where Dale and others, we're going to have to talk to you guys and you, Amy, because we to bring in a guest speaker or an expert, someone like Sam and others, to one of these meetings every month, it's a great avenue for you to talk about your technology, your needs. I know Recycling of Composites has engaged with several of the CCs in Utah, and they're trying to help with some of the student capstone projects in recycling. Because everything we do, Sam, whether it's these towers or the blades, if we don't have a solution for what we're going to do afterwards, we can't just bury everything. That's a real issue for, I think, everything that the composite world's going to deal with. So that's almost relevant throughout every tech committee. But right now, the tech committees, as I mentioned, are meeting monthly. They are also programming at SAMPE Seattle. So you're going to see some sessions sponsored by High Temp Materials, sponsored by Thermoplastics, and that was the motivation. Get them involved in that. Eventually, they may help us do some of the journal articles. But the whole idea is to bring in some folks who know us and who don't know us. So for intellectual stimulation, you can get together and learn and exchange. That's good on this slide, Chris. And by the way, I wanted to add, we have about 150 technical papers from SAMPE Seattle, and I believe the admissions were 250 or more. So it's a very difficult decision this year to select, the papers for presentation. But in a way, that's great, because you can imagine, Sam and I were talking before this thing started, and I asked him, Sam, are you attending? And he wasn't sure. He thought someone on his team might. But that's the benefit of SAMPE Seattle. Not only do you get technical engagement opportunities, You get to go to show floor where there are a couple of hundred exhibitors. You get to come to some of the tutorials and more. I know, Chris, that you're going to talk about.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a member to join these technical committees. So if this is something you're intrigued about, jump in, let Raj know. And we'll be sending this deck out to Dale and Kim to share with you guys. So so some of this stuff, there's some click-throughs that you'll be able to access, like that brochure that you see on the screen now will take you to a PDF so you can get more detail about this.
Excellent.
So one of the things that we do encourage of our technical committees and other groups is to join us on 365, which is our kind of if you can think of it as a walled garden of SAMPE members and interested non-members who want to have kind of a LinkedIn experience just for you guys, just for the people who really are interested in our world. So 365 is where you can go and there's a live feed. You can post things about what's happening with you or your organization. You can seek out different experts too. So there's a member directory. You can find out where they're located, their contact information, there's areas of specialty, and so forth. And of course, all of our committees have their own groups within 365. So you can go in there and chat amongst the committee or take it bigger, and to anybody who comes to 365, they can also chat and engage with each other online. So there's that engagement level, but it's also little subcategories within 365 that you can get involved in.
And Kristen, I think it's easy for folks to register. I think all we ask for is name, email.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Just your
Yeah.
contact information like you'd find on any website of this nature, like a LinkedIn. So yeah, so go check it out. And that's the link that you see at the top of the page. And we'll have this for you later on as well.
All right, good.
Okay, so so this is the show that we've been talking about all year. So so this is happening in a few weeks, April 17th through the 20th. And then, of course, it's happening in Seattle at the Convention Center. But I want to say that we're number 6, the 6th show to be in this new Summit building. So it's a few blocks away from where we used to have our show in Seattle at the Arch, if you remember that. But this is a beautiful new building, and we'll go through some of why we're going to be there. But one of the things to point out too is all these technical committees are going to be in this building.
Right.
So I do want you guys to join us. We're going to be, I think, is it Raj, Tuesday on the 18th? You have
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so we invite you all to come and be a part of that. So yes, I wanted to share with you. We did a site inspection. Gosh, what was it? A couple months ago, Raj?
Right. Yeah.
And so
Early
this,
on.
yeah, exactly. So this is kind of a rendering that you see on the left of the building on a rainy Seattle day. Lots of glass, lots of windows, lots of natural light. In fact, even the trade show floor has it has a roof that can open up to the sky if it's a nice day. So you can see natural light coming in, which is very unusual for a convention center. But again, this is happening. The conference is April 17th through the 19th. Our online registration rates are happening now, but they end on the 14th. So after the 14th, you'll have to pay on-site rates, which are more expensive. So please do register as soon as you're done here. So this is us in front of one of the stairs that goes up to the second floor of the Summit building, but you can see that there's just all this beautiful construction going on, natural wood everywhere, which makes a lot of sense in Seattle, right?
And Chris, I know sustainability, you're going to talk about it, but that's, one of the themes that's going to be prevalent throughout SAMPE Seattle. But these guys, I think as they designed it, they also thought that through. That's why the center that you talked about, it's not the same that you've been to.
No.
I mean, it's not going to be a Jacob Javits Center. This is really a slick venue for networking and education.
Indeed, it is. And it's going to be great because when you're in these meetings, having the education sessions, as you can see by these pictures, you're getting natural light. So you're not going to be, feeling like you're trapped in like this Las Vegas casino, no windows. It's going to be great. So
Right.
they've done a good job at the summit of using natural composite material as well. I'm sure they didn't intentionally know that they were going to be catering to our industry, but they are in a way. But this is all happening in real time. A lot of what you see here is still some of the construction material in the pictures, but I just wanted you to have a quick glimpse of what's going to happen. So as you're looking at those pictures, just know that we are going to have a lot of tutorials. They're taking place on Monday, April 17th. So you want to be there hopefully by Sunday night so you can start fresh with the tutorials that run the gamut of everything from 101 to some very deep dives into some very sophisticated conversations.
Yeah, one of them is ablation, material removal. I had to Google that before I got on. Ablation applications and state of the art. So as Chris mentioned, 3 hours, Scott Beckwith has been instrumental in finding us these experts, but you can really add to your experience by coming the day early for that 3-hour tutorial.
That's right. I'm going to show you a video in a moment about our keynote speaker, John Langford. He's the founder and CEO of Electric.Aero. And he's going to be speaking about hybrid electric airplanes with human gas turbine and fusion power. And that's happening on the 18th, first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock to 9:30. Get your coffee, come on in and really be dazzled. This is a great speaker, very articulate, very passionate about what he's doing. I've been following his career my entire life, as it turns out. I didn't know when I was a kid, when I saw this video I'm about to share with you, that I would be doing this today, but it's really cool.
I mean, the serial inventor, right?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Just a really wonderful leader in our industry. And then we have on Thursday for our breakfast speaker, Scott Berry, who is a vehicle and development and certification guru over at Joby Aviation. He's going to be talking about building the team to build the dream, which I think we all in this day and age need to hear about and hear what his take is on it as we go through the post-pandemic challenges of hiring the right folks. So he's going to be on Thursday, April 20th. Again, first thing. And then to wrap things up, we have got some very cool tours happening. They're interactive. They're going to be designed to take you front and center into some of the coolest manufacturing technologies and applications in the Seattle area. The first one is Museum of Flight Tour, which is going to be great. The other one, which I'm going to probably have to hitch a ride to get to, is the Boeing 777 tour. There are some prices associated with these tours because we have to cover our overhead buses and all that good stuff, but those are happening on Thursday. So you'll want to stick around for the afternoon. These tours go from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and they are in conjunction, so you have to pick one or the other. But yeah, it's going to be great, and a great way to wrap things up, a great way to network with folks and just be in a very fun and interesting environment and inspiring environment too. So I'm looking forward to that. But then also I wanted to just let you know that we are still taking exhibitors. So if you're on this call and you've been waffling about whether or not to have a booth or a table at SAMPE 2023, please do. There's still some time to reserve your booth or a sponsorship. So if you have a few marketing dollars you want to put toward our conference, there's those opportunities. There's still some good locations on the show floor. I recommend getting close to where the food is. That's where everybody always goes. So that's a good one. And then we can put you in touch with Efren as well.
Chris, I was just going to mention for the panels, I know Dale is excited to attend the panels. We have Joe Fox on. He's going to help us put on an infrastructure panel. I believe he has a lot of state and government leaders. There's also the sustainability and thermoplastics panel. So those are all happening on that 19th.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, Raj. And there are committee meetings that we talked about earlier, Paige and DEI and some others that are happening all throughout the week. So we can get you in touch with the right chairs for those committees if you're interested in joining those closed meetings as well. Okay, let's see if I can get this video to play. Okay. Well, it played earlier. No, that's not gonna do it. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have to go to my YouTube account.
Oh, you're just gonna pop it, yeah.
Yeah.
Dale, do you think we covered most of everything you wanted to cover? I mean, we're gonna get through this too, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot going on. It's well worth everybody's time.
Yeah, it's
So-
certainly an experience like JEC, like your summer event, like the UAMI events. You know, it's this experience and getting together with community and a lot of new folks, especially what Chris mentioned, where, you know, having those UAM sessions, so a lot of urban air mobility. How do you lightweight? Sam knows all about that. So,
Yeah, yeah, and all of these events, I like to say we create collisions, and then but they're good collisions, people that come to each other, running each other serendipitously or on purpose. But and then there's the ones that you, I, and others can actually facilitate. And I love
That's right.
facilitating collisions.
oh, here's the video. Oh, Chris, you're on
Chris
mute.
is-
Hang on a second. It keeps freezing on me. I had it going for a second here. Hang on.
And so we'll get the video going and we'll have to end the meeting with that.
Right.
Okay, let's see. One last chance. There we go. Can you see that?
Not yet. Oh, I worked in the pretrial.
Of course it did. There we go.
Good. That reminds me, don't miss our student contest, bridge, fuselage, additive, right? So that's another reason why, Sam, you got to think about showing up to Seattle. The student contests are pretty phenomenal.
Always a lot of fun when you put them on the Instron and you get them, and
Failure,
the load
yeah.
up, the load up and the failure. Yeah.
Right, right. And that's on the show floor. So no one's
Yeah.
going to take time away from your experience with our great exhibitors, but right on the show floor where the SAMPE booth is, right, Chris? So we got everything going
Yep.
on right on the show floor.
By the way, that was our keynote speaker that you just saw as a kid, John Langford. So I remember seeing this as a kid and was fascinated by Monarch. And so he's going to take it from this to where he is today.
So is this available on YouTube?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I've got the link in the
Okay.
deck. So yeah, so there you have it. It's kind of a fun retro video, but it gives you a little taste into John's early starts at MIT and what he was doing with human-powered aircraft at the time. It made the news in Texas where I was as a kid, and so it was kind of fun to see. So anyway,
Yes.
he's our keynote. It would be very
So
cool.
if we, what keywords do we want to look up on YouTube to find that video?
Oh, actually, it's let me see. That's a good question. I'll have to send that to you, Dale. I'm sorry.
Okay, didn't know if just the name of the your keynote speaker and
Yeah.
Monarch or something.
Yeah, exactly. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people that are on it, but it was put out there by a Trolledad, TROLLETDAD. So I don't know who that is, but it's a Good Morning America clip. And so all I did was, I think the keywords I used was Monarch, MIT, John Langford.
All right. That's right.
John Langford.
Mm-hmm.
Dale, from a curiosity point, for all the participants on, thank you so much for staying on. Can you just put in the chat if you are attending and what the reason is you will be attending for? Are you an author? Are you an exhibitor? Are you just going there to learn, to network? So in the chat, if you don't mind, folks, those of you who've stayed on, which is just about everyone, so we're very thankful, but in the chat, just put down, if you are attending SAMPE Seattle, your motivation for going. I'd just be very curious if you can in our last second or two, right, Dale?
Yep, we're pretty much at time, so.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mark. First one, you win the prize. Come to the SAMPE booth, attending as an exhibitor. Great, good.
All right. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for attending today. We did manage to fill up a whole hour, but it was a very interesting hour. And be sure to sign up and go to SAMPE if you're not already planning to be there. And we will see you there.
Oh, sure.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Raj. See you later.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.